Hello and welcome back. Long time no see. My name is Paige Elizabeth, and today marks the beginning of both a new and an old journey because we are back to dive into the world of Shatter Me by Tahereh Mafi, a 2011 dystopian fantasy that had such a profound impact on 16-year-old me that I have one singular tattoo, and it's a quote from this series handwritten by Miss Tahereh Mafi herself. It's that serious. These people that we haven't met yet, they're real to me. I know them. I was nervous that revisiting this series would change my perspective on it, but it really only reignited my love for this world and these characters. And I am now, for the second time in my life, forcing literally everyone that I know to read it. Hopefully you included. That being said, when I say this series, I am specifically talking about the first 3 books. These were published sequentially in 2011, 13, and 14, and then 4 years later in 2018, Tahereh Mafi wrote a follow-up trilogy that takes place immediately after the events in Ignite Me, and I have not read them, and I will not read them. The OG trilogy is just so sacred to me. I can't mess with that. It has nothing to do with the books themselves and truly everything to do with like whatever the hell is wrong with me. So for these plot summary and analysis videos, I will only be covering the details of the first 3 books. And I know that this is a very popular series. There are so many spoilers out there, but I think that the best way to experience the twists and the turns is as they come, because this series is one of the original blueprints for YA slow burn romance yearning, which also means that we might have to wait a while for there to be any payoff. We might not understand the context in which we live and all that came before. You know what I mean? As this is a character-driven dystopian novel, we need to keep our characters under very close surveillance. So on this side of the whiteboard, we will have all of the characters that we meet along the way, as well as an emotional timeline of our leading lady, Juliet. It's just a timeline that goes up and down with her emotions. We're keeping it pretty simple here. And then on the other side is something that's really kind of just a little treat for me. There's an iconic scene in the second book where Juliet states that her bones are on the floor, which is of course not true in the slightest. And it made me realize how often she speaks about her bones hyperbolically. So every time there's a bone metaphor, we're gonna get to pop a bone onto this side of the board. Don't think about it too hard. It's fun. It's just fun. And now, just to get a few things really quickly out of the way so that I don't talk about nothing forever, here's a little housekeeping. I will be making fun of these books out of love. It can be cringe. It has a very particular style, but to be cringe is to be free. And it's also a loudly anti-fascist teen dystopian romantasy. Like, it's awesome. So any joshing around that I do is as a lover, not a hater. This is a young adult series. Physical connection and intimacy is a really important theme in this series. And like, my crushes on these characters started when I was 16, so I get it. But let's not be weird about it. You might know more than me about this world. Because I've only read the OG trilogy and there are like, I think 5 more books set in this world. If you've read them, I'm sure you know more about the history and the structure of this society than I do, and that's okay. Try to leave spoilers out of the comments. And lastly, these books are fun. My recommendation is to go into this story with an open heart and an open mind. And that's all I'll say on that. But that's really everything. Wow. It is an honor and a privilege to be experiencing this story with you, whether it's for the first time or the 100th. Thanks for coming. Content warnings and info about the book will be in the description. And huge thank you to all of the artists for giving me permission to use your art to represent the characters in this video. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Wow. And special thank you to my friend Katie for dividing all of the individual bone pieces that we're going to be putting on the board for me. Thank you. And well, strap in. It's time to get going. Tahereh starts us off with an epigraph that quotes the road not taken by Robert Frost. 2 roads diverge in a wood, and I I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. And this is really the thesis of the story as a whole. It answers the question that a lot of dystopian books ask us. In a world governed by power-hungry despots, how do we enact change? Well, Miss Tahereh is saying that we take the road less traveled by. Whoa! Paige, I thought this was going to be about a silly little romantasy from back in the day. It is that, for sure, but there's also a really empowering message at the center of this story that does feel particularly relevant to me at this time. And we can't ignore that because of all the fun, angsty yearning. Our main character, the girl we will be following throughout this entire adventure, is one Miss Juliet Ferrars. And she's been locked away in total isolation for 264 days with nothing but a notebook and a pen to keep her company. It's clear from the first page that being locked in an asylum for almost a year isn't, I would say, healthy for a person's mental or physical well-being. Juliet isn't doing great. She has this obsession with numbers. She counts everything, minutes, breaths, footsteps. She hasn't spoken a single word since she was locked away. And the tone of her narration throughout the whole series, but especially in this first book when she's the most isolated, is very prosy in this stream of conscious, almost watercolor-like style. Like when she's thinking about the world outside of this cell that she's trapped in, she thinks, the sun drops into the ocean and splashes browns and reds and yellows and oranges into the world outside my window. A million leaves from 100 different branches dip into the wind, fluttering with the false promise of flight. The gust catches their withered wings only to force them downward, forgotten, left to be trampled by the soldiers stationed just below. There's this feeling of almost complete dissociation. Like Juliet has been so separated from the world that she only exists in her head. It's kind of dark. And the world outside her cell isn't looking too hot either. It is a little too hot, actually. That's a global warming joke. I'm gonna info dump just for a second here so that we can establish a clear picture of this society because it does not look like ours anymore. It used to. This story is set in a modern day North America that was headed toward an environmental collapse that was going to be devastating. So a political group called the Reestablishment stepped up and said, hey, hand the government over to us and we'll make everything better. Hold on. Nature will be fine. People will have money and we're totally not gonna make anything worse. And it took them 7 years of campaigning, but eventually the Reestablishment did succeed in their takeover. By the time they managed to step into power, things had already gotten pretty bad. There was already a food shortage that was bad for people and animals, and the environment was just fucked. Just fucked. There were no seasons anymore, birds couldn't fly, food couldn't grow. Bad, bad, bad. And this new stage of collapse and the government takeover all happened about 4 years ago, just before they took Juliet from her home. And now, 4 years later, things aren't looking better from her cell window. Nope. The Reestablishment did help regulate food distribution, but there isn't that much food to distribute. And there's such a violent governing force that now the people are just suffering because of all the murder happening at the hands of the government. So is their help really helping? Okay. Info dump over. On top of the constant state of existential crisis that comes with societal collapse, the guards that work in this asylum, out of the blue, tell Juliet that she's getting a cellmate. She has no idea why, which is unsettling enough to begin with. And when she wakes up to find that her new roommate is a boy with muscle and teeth, and he's that very specific book age of no more than a few years older than me, she's pretty sure this is the end for her. She's just gonna die. Now I'm gonna read you the first description we get of Juliet's new roommate because I think that the power of a reader's mind to just completely ignore what's on the page is incredible. I always imagined this boy as having a very goody-goody type of image, like a sweet boyish face and dark hair. And these are children, just to clarify. Juliet is 17 and this boy is 18, and this is his description. His arms are tatted up, half sleeves to his elbows. His eyebrow is missing a ring they must have confiscated. Dark blue eyes, brown hair, sharp jawline, strong lean frame. Gorgeous, dangerous, terrifying. horrible. I think it's because of what we learn about him throughout the story, but it is so funny to me that one, this character is supposed to be a bad boy, and two, even 16-year-old me could not see that for him. So buff, scary roommate character comes in with a very hostile energy. He takes her bed and pushes it against his so that she has nowhere to sleep, and he's taunting her and he's laughing sinisterly. And Juliet is just spiraling deeper and deeper into literal insanity. She doesn't care about his power play. She just wants to not be attacked by this boy that she's locked in a room with. That is scary. And even when she's curled up on the floor in the corner of the room trying to stay away from him, she's simultaneously scared that she's going to hurt him. Strange. Why is she in this asylum again? We spend a lot of time at the beginning of the book fully entrenched in Juliet's head. And like I said, it feels dissociative. So while her thoughts wander and jump, we get little hints at who she is and what her life has been like. And this combo of Juliet being astronomical levels of traumatized and this story being told in first-person POV means we can't accept all of her thoughts as the absolute truth. Not because Juliet is lying to us on purpose, but because she has such an extreme level of bias and she's our only lens into this story. So you almost have to question her in like the way that a loving best friend would. I bring this up now because one of the ways that we see even Juliet doubting herself is when she crosses things off like they are just thoughts in her notebook. She compares herself to a raindrop, fragile and unimportant, and she thinks, my parents emptied their pockets of me and left me to evaporate on a concrete slab. Now, I don't doubt for a second that Juliet's parents were abusive monsters, but it's important to look at the whole story knowing that this is the truth only as Juliet sees it. There are a lot of crossed out thoughts in this series, and Juliet makes a lot of big statements and she feels really deeply, and the exact reason that she crosses out her thoughts is never stated explicitly. So it can be easy to get so caught up in her head that we accept her view as the only view, even though she doesn't fully trust herself at this point. On that note, there are simply too many crossed out thoughts for us to talk about them all, but we will definitely have a couple check-ins to talk about the overarching themes of the thoughts that she crosses out. And if you're someone that tried to read this book and the formatting threw you off or came off as cringy, I think that makes total sense. It's a very earnest kind of flowery style that isn't popular in this current era of like, give me nothing but the outline of a shadowy man and the suggestion of intimacy. But I gotta say, it works beautifully in the story as a way to visibly reflect Juliet's mental state. And I think the writing was heavily influenced by the author's experience as a poet, so I say embrace the earnestness. At least it's doing something unique, you know? The next day, there is heavy tension in the room. Despite his previous douchebaggery, it seems like Juliet is so starved of human interaction that even intense eye contact from someone that she hates is enough to get her going. But even more than that, her cellmate reminds her of someone that she used to know. Somebody that she used to know. These two refuse to tell each other anything, like not even their names. And pretty much every conversation attempt ends in hostile silence. And then with a knock on the door, breakfast arrives in the form of Big Brother slop. And I'd like to take a moment of silence because this is all Juliet has eaten for almost an entire year. But at least she has a window in her cell, right? She starts to dissociate through the meal by going to a place that she often goes to in her mind when things feel bad, which is always. She thinks about a bird flying through the sky, something that she's only ever seen in her dreams, and it's the same bird every single time. A white bird with streaks of gold like a crown atop its head. This bird is very important because Juliet wants to be this bird. The symbol of this pure, bright animal flying through the sky represents the freedom that Juliet wants but thinks is impossible. In her world, birds don't fly. Animals are dying and there's no hope that she can latch onto, but she wants it. Inserting myself here to say something that might be a little bit of a hot take, but This bird, it's my least favorite symbol in the series. I think it's just the most obvious one. Like, it's written pretty plainly that the bird is hope. But I will say, as a lover girl, there is kind of a fun twist to the whole bird symbol thing. So for better or worse, the bird stays. Also, the bird in question is this like cuckoo bird that I think the fandom as a whole has kind of largely agreed to pretend is not the bird. And that's okay. Also, this artist, Palin Line Art, has kind of brought the cuckoo bird back in like a really big way. Their interpretation makes it so much cooler. Adam snaps Juliet back into reality with a light little tap on her shoulder, and this little tap is the first human contact that she has had in 264 days, so she freezes. Isolation is lonely, and community is a basic human need. And Juliet needs, but can't have, for a cryptic reason that we don't understand yet. And this guy looks so familiar that it is killing her. She thinks every muscle, every tendon in my body is fraught with tension and tied into knots that clench my spine. And I don't know about you, but that sounds like a bone metaphor to me. Let's get this baby on the board. We're gonna see these bones popping up a lot when Juliet feels stuck in her own head and overwhelmed, which is exactly how she feels now. Because this guy that looks like a guy that she used to know just touched her, and she's so alone, and she just has this sad little window to look out of and this nasty food, and she wants to disappear so that she can escape all of this. But more than that, she wants out. Juliet, who has spent all 10 pages of this book so far making herself as small as possible, thinks to herself, I want to smash this concrete world into oblivion. I want to be bigger, better, stronger. Even though Juliet has no hope that things can change for her or the world, she still wants it to. And that is so important. So important that it gives us our second bone. But wanting isn't enough. She is stuck in this hopeless reality, so she tells her cellmate not to touch her. And she tells us that it's because dead things happen when people touch her. Crazy thing to drop out of the blue. Second chapter, no further context. And then they move on to the next part of this day in the life of an asylum cell. It's shower time. The shower setup is just about as bleak as you would imagine a torturous prison asylum shower to be. And the familiar way that Juliet navigates through this system is heart-wrenching. While Juliet is trying to get Buff Scary Roommate to the showers without getting either of them killed, she thinks, it's a prison. They feed us nothing and our eyes never see each other. Nights are punctuated by screams and heaving sobs. I spent the first 3 months in the company of my own stench. No one ever told me how the system worked. No one speaks to you unless they're delivering bad news. So she has been isolated, starved, and living with the threat of death over her head this entire time. And now that she's been handed a simultaneously muscly and useless boy, she just can't help but feel for him. Juliet is the type to see someone going through the same suffering that she has, and even though he's been so asshole-ish, she wants better for him. AKA, she's a better person than me. And he just looks so familiar to her, which also makes him much less scary. Unfortunately, when they get back to their cell, Juliet's selfless optimism is instantly squashed by the reminder that he stole her bed. And deciding to not be afraid is much easier said than done. One might even say that the contrast between action and intention is one of the major themes in this story. But then, Juliet, wet and cold and huddled in the corner of their cell, closes her eyes, and our little muscled asshole drapes both of their blankets over Juliet's shoulders. He shoves her bed back to her side of the room, and he finally tells us his name. Adam. Our sweet cellmates get a little shut-eye, but considering this is Juliet's headspace while she's waking up, I can confidently say she doesn't get a good night of sleep. There's some critical analysis for you. Even though there's been some positive movement between Juliet and Adam, it's not like they've become BFFs overnight. Their conversations are not about to get any more productive. This is a layered dynamic with the whole does Juliet Juliet know him? Why are they both in here? Adam is a boy and Juliet wants to be friends but has no idea what happens in 18-year-old boy brains. Does anyone? Then Adam does something a little crazy. He tells Juliet that she's not insane, which is something that she's been trying to convince herself since she was taken away from her home 4 years ago. And here's a tall, tattooed, muscled up guy telling her exactly what she's always wanted to hear and wrapping her up tight in his blanket, and Juliet does not know how to handle all this. But she can't see an arrogant asshole when she looks at Adam anymore. She sees an emotionally stunted teenage boy in a collapsing world, and she wishes she could save him, which is both selfless and self-sacrificing, because whatever reason got her sent to the asylum is something that she very clearly blames herself for, and she's harboring a lot of guilt. I guess if you're gonna channel your guilt into something, wanting to save the people around you is not the worst way to go. Adam, who is shirtless at this point, tells Juliet that he is sweating, which in a place like this means you could literally be about to die because you don't get to go to the nurse's office if you feel sick. So Juliet is terrified and wants him to put his shirt back on because she's very flustered. And she even describes his body, as raw and powerful. It's okay. We need to be understanding. Even though Juliet and Adam are a little caught up in the emotional weight settling over them, they still agree, partially thanks to the shared trauma of being in this asylum, that the real enemy is the broken government outside of their window, not each other. Hashtag Haymitch, hashtag remember who the real enemy is. Juliet reciprocates by telling Adam her name. And he is so happy to have a breakthrough with her that he smiles a smile that cracks her spine apart. The next day begins with a more introspective journal entry. There are a chunk of journal entries where Juliet reflects on her childhood and her parents, and we learn a few important things. From a young age, touching Juliet seemed to be dangerous, and that makes childhood very hard. And instead of being normal and concerned about it, Juliet's parents blamed her and took it out on her with lots of yelling and shaming and guilt. And the impact that had on Juliet, and I do hate to say this, is that she became a flat earther. The scientists are wrong. The world is flat. I know because I was tossed right off the edge and I've been trying to hold on for 17 years. I love this girl. I love this girl. The drama is extreme. No, she was really treated terribly, and a lot of it is implied, but the general message is that her parents were awful people that isolated her and treated her like an animal. Also, I had no idea that so many of the most iconic quotes from Shatter Me are from the beginning of the first book. Like, if you weren't there, you just don't know, because these were everywhere. Shatter Me was a foundational scripture on Tumblr. For example, Juliet she's just thinking, and she thinks the sun is an arrogant thing, always leaving the world behind when it tires of us. The moon is a loyal companion. When you're 13 and you're discovering poetry through the lens of a teen romance novel on Tumblr, your life is never gonna be the same again. Like, the sun is an arrogant thing, Juliet, and the moon is a loyal companion. It understands what it means to be human. While she's pondering the sun and the moon, she shows us another piece of herself. Similar to when she noted that she wanted to save Adam from living an awful life the way she has, she looks outside her cell window and wishes that she could punch through it to feel human. This tells us that Juliet is not submitting to this situation. She's been tortured and abused enough to feel like changing her life is impossible, and that she might even deserve to be locked away. But even with that helplessness, there's still a fight inside of her and a want for more. And that is what's important, because what she's endured has trained her to be small and quiet, even though that's not who she is. And we need to be able to see that disconnect between who she truly is and who she was forced to become. And the bottom line is that Juliet wants to live. I gotta say, Juliet and David Hume would be like this, okay? Because this girl knows full well that the ecosystem has collapsed to the point of birds not being able to fly anymore, and she still wakes up every single day and thinks, hey, maybe a bird will fly today, and maybe tomorrow the sun will not rise on the reaping. I'm so sorry. I wrote this when I was deep in the Hunger Games trenches. And we're back. Trailer just came out. Oh. Adam, on the other hand, is not such an optimist. He seems to exist mostly on a spectrum of anger, and he is not happy when Juliet, who is for sure malnourished, tells him that they're probably not gonna get any more food today, and that this asylum that has concrete walls doesn't offer rehabilitation programs for its inhabitants. Or also when Juliet implies that she got a life sentence here and has no family to get her out. Two beautiful people trauma bonding. It's a powerful thing. Adam tells her that he's been acting the way that he has because he thought he was gonna be put into a cell with a psychopath. So he had to be a big alpha man. And he doesn't understand why Juliet has been so nice to him. Me either, bud. Then Juliet asks him about the outside world. Let's talk politics, baby. The best kind of politics. Fake ones. Unless... When the reestablishment took over, it wasn't just in North America. They went global. They divided every inch of land on the planet into 3,333 different territories called sectors. And the sectors are then divided into territories that are ruled by a POP. It's meant to be. Okay, a POP is a person of power. The vibe is giving fascism. It's giving fascism, but make it global. Sorry. The reestablishment's method of governing is killing anyone that disagrees with them, destroying massive chunks of human history and culture, effectively censoring anything that goes against what they're promoting, and doing it all under the pretense that they can make their society great again. I wish that that was a reach, but that is basically the exact same verbiage that's literally used in the book. I'm so sorry. Adam then tells us that there are rebels in this world fighting back, but overall, the update is that everything is bad. And then they have this weird exchange of words where Juliet tells Adam that he shouldn't want to know what she's thinking all the time because he doesn't even know her. And he laughs at her in like a really kind of way and then ends the conversation. I feel like you're picking up what I'm putting down, and you should be. This is some heavy-handed foreshadowing, but no reveals yet. We need to sit in the dark dank of this cell just a little bit longer. 2 weeks go by in the asylum and things are okay. As much as they can be. Juliet and Adam are adjusting to life as cellmates and they get along now, but as more time passes, Juliet starts to worry that being trapped in here for an extended period of time will carve out Adam's soul in the same way that it has for her. So she writes in her notebook about those worries. And about that damn white bird with streaks of gold like a crown atop its head. And I do think I will remember that line until I'm on my deathbed. Juliet breaks out of her journaling session to have a conversation with Adam that completely changes their roommate dynamic. Adam sits next to Juliet with their backs against the wall, their shoulders only inches away. Their closeness is a reminder to Juliet that she hasn't been touched or hugged by a loved one in literal years. And it's dangerous for someone to be so close to her skin. So she thinks, my bones are begging for something I cannot allow. The two of them play their usual game of back and forth, asking questions and refusing to answer them, until bam! Adam flashes his big baby blues at Juliet and she can't deny it any longer. She knows this boy. And she has for quite some time. While Juliet is having some intense That's So Raven style deja vu, Adam tells her about the reestablishment's plan to make a homogenous global language, which Juliet recognizes as a sign of the end times. So now she's trying to reckon with the awareness that she's in a dystopian novel and this reunion with a boy from her childhood that she's pretty sure doesn't remember her. Having history with a hot boy and the destruction of culture is a lot to handle at one time. Adam sees that this girl is on the verge of a breakdown and he gives her a hug, which normally I'm all for. I think that more hugging in fiction would actually solve a lot of problems. But this is the girl with dangerous skin and empathy levels that literally rival Gandhi himself, so it just makes things worse for her, bone style. And when she scrambles pulls away from Adam, this is when he makes what I think is a real mistake. He turns into a full-on pick-me. She tells him not to touch her, and he says, "I disgust you that much?" Come on, bro. Where's my hug at, though? No, absolutely not. Like, I don't want to say that it's Jeremiah coded, but it kind of is. Like, if the shoe fits. They just end up in another conversational stalemate. They are both very clearly hiding something. Even though their conversation ends in the same stilted way that it always does, we know so much more. Adam is very into Juliet, which I do find a little odd because they're locked in a cell together and it's only been 2 weeks, but I don't hold that against Adam. This is a book from 2011 that's mostly about the romance. And if we're being completely honest, Juliet is also deeply obsessed with him, but she has been abandoned and alone for years. And Juliet grew up going to the same school as Adam. In Juliet's next journal entry, we learn that everything was kind of normal when Juliet was a kid. She writes about all of these day-to-day things that I think make the world feel normal to us, too. Like libraries and movies and getting your hair done. But in the background, everything was getting worse. We're talking no food and economical collapse kind of bad. These bite-sized exposition scenes definitely tell us more about the world, but my personal theory is that Juliet is thinking a lot about the past because of this reunion with Adam, and she is in full-blown crush land for this boy who has muscles and keeps looking at her and wants to get to know her. It's like the level of obsession that you can only relate to when you're in the midst of the psychosis of a crush that you probably shouldn't have. Like, to anyone outside of that situation, you just seem insane, but when you're in it, it's everything, all consuming. And if you know what I'm talking about, then you also know that when you're in crush land, you start reflecting on yourself like, oh, I have this little quirk, are they gonna think it's ugly or weird? And Juliet's is that she's a murderer. Oh, sorry, you didn't know? Yep. Sweet Juliet, the most empathetic girl on the planet, is in this asylum because her dangerous skin has killed. She's a killer, Bella. It's just not right. It's not. And while you're trying to process that information, let me kick down this metaphorical and literal door for you, because 5 soldiers burst into their cell, guns up, screaming, "Put your hands up! Put your hands up!" Juliet falls. They kick her in the ribs. Someone's holding a gun to Adam's head and they drag Juliet out of the cell. And Juliet just hopes that if they're gonna kill her, they do it quickly. 2 days later, Juliet wakes up in an empty cell in the asylum, which is insane. This girl needs sleep so badly. To a soldier telling her to get up and follow him. And when she does, a second soldier steps into the doorway and points a gun at Juliet. But wait, Juliet knows this soldier. She recognizes him. She remembers him. Because the soldier is Adam and he's pointing a gun at Juliet. Adam is a soldier working for the re-establishment, and that's why he wouldn't tell Juliet why he was sent to the asylum, because he was sent to the asylum to spy on her the whole time. The whole Juliet and Adam have a past thing that's been like dangling in front of us the whole time was not the twist. No. We're just getting started. I'm telling you now, Tahereh Mafi loves a twist, and you will suffer at the mercy of her hands, and you better say thank you. So, she sees Adam pointing a gun at her, and she thinks, hey, you guys can actually just go ahead and kill me. I don't want to be here anymore. But they don't. Sorry, babe. Instead, they take her to another empty room in the asylum, and she meets the man in charge. Kind of. He's almost in charge. Let me humbly introduce you to Warner. This is how Juliet describes him to us. I'm immediately struck by his youth. He can't be much older than me. His skin is flawless, unblemished. His jawline sharp and strong. His eyes are the palest shade of emerald I've ever seen. He's beautiful. His crooked smile is calculated evil. I hate him. I would say his vibe is like the son of a rich CEO took his job as a Nepo baby really seriously, so he's immaculately dressed and unbearable. Juliet uses the word pompous to describe him, which I think is perfect. Warner senses a weird vibe between Adam and Juliet that he can't seem to figure out, so he tries to bait Adam into saying something incriminating about Juliet, but Adam says nothing, which is frankly boring to someone as spoiled and maniacally evil as Warner. So he swats Adam away and gets down to business, because as much as Juliet wants to die right now, that's not why Warner brought her here. He has a proposition for her. Warner, which is his last name, by the way, first name unknown, he tells Juliet that he's been watching her, kind of just by keeping track of her paper trail, reading her medical records and lawsuits, so he kind of knows a lot about her, including her murderous secret. And he wants Juliet to work for him, to be his pet, like an attack dog that can torture anyone Warner points at with just the touch of her finger. While Warner paces around and tells Juliet his supervillain plan, he has this level of familiarity with her that's very strange. And it definitely comes from his comfortability in a position of power, but it also feels like he almost has a parasocial view of her. He smiles at her, which is something we find out much later on is something that he literally never does, and he makes these weird little jokes about how pretty she is, and he even uses this term of endearment despite how openly disgusted by him Juliet is. He says, "Don't struggle, love. You'll only make things more difficult for yourself." All this to say, Warner is a beautiful freak, and Juliet has no interest in doing anything for him, especially not hurting people. But her current position doesn't really give her much of a choice, so even though she wants to fight against Warner's control, he uses his power to strong-arm her into submission, and his first act is to officially assign Adam as Juliet's personal guard, forcing them to be constantly close to each other after Adam's betrayal of working for the reestablishment. And Warner can tell that this is going to be torture for them, so he is having the time of his life. Now it's Adam's turn to lead Juliet through the asylum with his hand on her back, and he's talking into her ear, and now Juliet's afraid because she could kill him by accident, and he's basically working for the devil. She does still think he's hot though. This inner conflict gives us a classic bone. "I have to beg my bones to stop shaking." This poor girl is about to go through so much more because Adam is taking her outside for the first time in almost a year. Being held captive in the asylum meant she could only see the outside world from the tiny window in her cell. And I like to imagine that this moment is similar to the New England experience of stepping outside on that first warm, sunny spring day, but obviously times like a million. And if that experience is enough to change people's lives, this is gonna be a damn rebirth for Miss Juliet. And she does bask in the glow of the sun, but it gets like a little bit ruined when Adam lifts her into a war tank to drive her to the local reestablishment headquarters, and she sees how awful the world looks. There are just less people than there should be, and all of the suburban housing areas are totally desolate because everyone's been moved into these massive industrial complexes. And with all the inconsistencies in the weather, the country has just turned into this gray, concrete, frankly, dystopia. Juliet is disappointed, but not surprised. Because even though the reestablishment said they were moving people into these industrial complexes to help strengthen society, they did it by taking away access to medication and religious rights and ostracizing anyone not considered healthy. And it kills Juliet. And she is that woke friend, and it will keep coming up. And we see this internal conflict that she has, not just about her feelings for Adam, but her feelings toward herself. Seeing the state of the world makes her think that hope in this world bleeds out of the barrel of a gun. And I hope it's not too late to fight back. So she feels like there is no hope, but she wants there to be. It almost feels like Juliet is on the precipice of change, but she doesn't know how to grab onto the things that she wants yet. So for now, she just tries to take it all in until Adam lifts her out of the tank and leads her into her new home base, Warner's reestablishment compound. And if you're reading the book, which does contain more obsessing over Adam than I'm even including in this, and you're thinking, my God, girl, stop getting caught up in the presence of this teen boy in the midst of societal collapse. I'm usually on your side, but in this case, I get it. She's 17 and she needs a hug. And she deserves to have a crush. This moment of Juliet walking into the reestablishment compound is one of the ones that really sticks with you. She sees this like lavish, overindulgent display of wealth and it makes her sick. Every dollar dripping from the luxury around her is blood on the reestablishment's hands. She knows that a fraction of what it costs to build this place could have fed hundreds, if not thousands of families, and another fraction would go miles in creating the society that the reestablishment promised everyone years ago. But instead, they only use their resources to benefit themselves. And seeing it laid out like this literally brings Juliet to her knees. She is someone who has personally suffered at the hands of the reestablishment, so she's seeing her own pain in the marble floors and fancy chandeliers. Adam scoops her up off the floor and takes her to her new cell, a luxurious bedroom. Juliet finds herself melting into Adam's comfort and then feeling guilty about it because he's kind of a participant in the government's bullshit and she is an ACAB girly, but she's also still pretty sure they're eventually going to torture and kill her here, so you gotta take the human contact where you can get it. This is so sad. Juliet's new room is simple. Bed, private bathroom, armoire filled with clothes tailored specifically to her measurements, security cameras. Totally normal. And Adam tells her that she needs to get dressed for a fancy dinner with Warner. This makes no sense to Juliet because of the previously mentioned torture she's anticipating. And then he gives her a tour of the bathroom and he creatively tells her that it's the only place without cameras. This is huge. Juliet isn't quite sure what to make of Adam now that he's kind of seeming like Warner's number 2 boy. So she, rightfully so, starts to think that he lured her into the bathroom so that he could like attack her. But Adam says, "Oh my God, girl, no." And then he stomps out of the bathroom with the perfect amount of broody boy angst. Juliet takes a hot shower for the first time in Lord knows how long, but she can't enjoy it because she sees it as the manipulation tactic that it is. Get her nice and comfy and maybe she'll murder whoever you want her to. I think another thing that makes Juliet feel like such a real main character is that you read an entire 2 pages about how she's like, it's so fucked that they're trying to get me with this nice shower. And then she's like, oh, and I'm so clean. This is heaven. And that makes sense. Both things can be true. She peeks into that armoire that's stuffed with clothes perfectly tailored to her measurements. And something about the intentionality of bringing in a girl who just wants to feel safe and human and giving her all of this nice stuff that she's never had access to just to convince her to murder. Yuck. This passage, yucky and personal. Adam comes back to take her to dinner and he appreciates her clean face. And he also seems to think that Juliet's a little bit foolish because she decides to forego any of the fancy dresses in her creepy armoire for the asylum clothes that she came here wearing. But regardless, he leads her to the dining room where she has to sit by Warner at the head of the table in a room full of people that she does not know at all. I'm pretty sure it's all of the compound's like soldiers and officials. Juliet sits to Warner's left and Adam gets to sit across from her, and Warner brings up her lacking outfit. He doesn't seem annoyed. He kind of seems like he's just filling her in on her options. Like, you could wear this nice dress. And he's smiling and beaming at her and telling her to eat her food. And when she refuses, he just smiles some more and says, "Don't confuse stupidity for bravery, love. I know you haven't eaten anything in days." And when she still refuses to eat, he pulls out a gun, locks eyes with Juliet, and shoots it across the room. He just hits like a hunk of meat, but the energy he's giving now more than ever is unstable. But still, Juliet only touches her food when Adam pushes it toward her. Oh yeah, that peeves Mr. Warner big time. He says, "Do I have to get Kent to do all my work for me?" Adam's last name is Kent. I don't think I've said that, but that's his last name. Yeah, so the girls are fighting and Juliet couldn't care less. Warner mentions her clothes again and he says that she needs to be looking her best when she's next to him, which comes across controlling as hell and is so crazy without future context, but no one can deny that Warner is a control freak. After their lovely meal, Warner walks Juliet back to her room and he says something kind of Grisha-verse coded. He says, "I don't want you to hate me. I'm only your enemy if you want me to be." It's kind of feeling like Warner walked so the Darkling could run. Sorry. Is it the Darkling who runs? Warner might trump the Darkling. The Darkling was a phase, Warner is forever. And I do hate to throw another quote at you, but there's an iconic one here from Warner who says, "You and I, Juliet, together, we could be unstoppable." And it's kind of the perfect unhinged line to set the girls on fire in 2011. And it did! What can I say? The obsession with evil men has been around for generations. Juliet thinks it's nasty, and her bone deep, pun intended, hate for this man only gets worse when he asks her to use her murder powers on him. Up to this moment, Warner has been completely covered head to toe, gloves included, to protect himself from a girl that literally has not once considered using her powers on him. And now that he's like, "Hey, I want to know what it feels like," he just seems more evil and out of his mind than Juliet ever could have imagined. And even with all of that, Juliet would still rather not use an ability that she's disgusted to have. But Warner does not give her much of a choice. He calls over one of his soldiers and says, "Hey, this girl is gonna try to run away from you, and I order you not to let her get out of your hands." This poor man knows exactly what he's being asked to do, and an honestly devastating standoff between him and Juliet ends with two bone metaphors: this man grabbing her arms and Juliet's powers surging from her body into his. She kind of describes herself like one of the Saja boys times 1,000. As soon as she makes contact with this guy, she can feel his life suck out of his body and go into hers. And she's so embarrassed and ashamed and disgusted, but it also feels really good to have life flowing through her like that. And part of her power is that once the contact is there, she's the only one that can break it. Maybe she's more like Edward than Genu. Juliet pushes this guy off of her and is left with the emotionally devastating knowledge that she is a walking weapon and she does not want to be the reason that another person dies. So while panic takes her over, she screams out for help, but all of the soldiers standing around them are too afraid to step in and help. So Warner steps in. His gloves are back on and he tries to calm her down, but Juliet is inconsolable, so he scoops her up and carries her away, and scared little Juliet passes out. What this scene tells us as readers is that the power Juliet has is really rare, if not entirely unique. No one in this highly ranked government compound knows how to handle the situation, not even their leader. When Juliet wakes up, she is laying in a bed and Warner is staring down at her. This is, of course, Juliet's worst nightmare, so she starts kicking and screaming, and Warner kind of just laughs a little and pats her like, settle down. And he thinks that she's scared because she might touch him by accident and hurt another person. Juliet tries to explain that she doesn't want to touch him because he disgusts her and not so much because she's scared of hurting him. Warner really isn't getting the memo and kind of just looks at her with puppy dog eyes, which is very confusing to all of us after everything that's happened. And that's when Juliet sits up and sees that she's not in her new bedroom. Oh no, my friend, she is in Warner's room, tucked into his bed, and he's trying to give her food because she hasn't eaten in days, and that's probably why she passed out. And Juliet does not like this domestic image one little bit. Why is Warner taking care of her like this and like giggling after he just threatened her and put her under constant surveillance and wants to use her as a weapon? So she does the logical thing and just asks him, like, what? And Warner says that he cares about her and he needs her. Juliet's thinking they might have different definitions of care. And when she says, okay, so you need me to kill people, Warner says, no, baby, I can kill people all on my own. That's why my daddy gave me this job. Because he is an actual Nepo baby that didn't come from nowhere earlier. His dad is the POP of North America. He just also has the vibe of a Nepo baby. But the bottom line is that Warner needs Juliet for a mysterious something other than murder. He is a self-proclaimed liar, which in his book makes him honest. Not sure about that math. That's like some Temptation Island math right there, actually. He mostly wants Juliet to eat something so that she doesn't pass out again. And throughout this entire conversation that riles Juliet up and has her slamming down glasses of water in outrage, Warner does not ever raise his voice, and he ends the conversation calmly by telling her to eat and sleep and stay in his room just because he wants her there. It's weird. It's weird. He's doing nice things, but in the creepiest way possible. On a cheery note, we have another journal entry about Juliet's childhood. This one is about evil kids and how they would ask Juliet why she hasn't killed herself yet. Yay! They are testing my patience. Juliet heard that from them and thought, wait, you actually kind of have a point. Why haven't I? And she thinks that it's because even though she has this evil power inside of her, all she's ever wanted was to be enough. She just wanted to be loved. I feel like I'm really bringing a sad vibe to the occasion. I promise this book is so much fun, but it's also a little bit dark, it's a little bit sad, it's a little bit emotional, it's a little bit heavy. And we love Juliet for that, okay? She's struggling for good reason, like she's been through a lot. Anyway, the next time Juliet wakes up, Warner is there to take her back to her own room. And walking through the halls, the fear coming off of all the soldiers in the compound is palpable. And it makes Juliet feel like she is a monster. But Warner says that their fear is important. He says that he forced her to use her powers in public so that they would be afraid of her. And it pisses him off that Juliet is not on the same page. He says, you don't understand that power and control can slip from your grasp at any moment and even when you think you're most prepared. These two things are not easy to earn. They are even harder to retain. You think I don't know how many of my own soldiers hate me? You think I don't know that they'd like to see me fall? What does this tell us about Warner? Maybe that he knows the consequences of his actions, so he chooses his moves very carefully and intentionally. I don't think it's a huge surprise here that Warner and Juliet aren't great at communicating, but I think that we can read between the lines. He's trying to tell her that by showing everyone how powerful she is, he's protecting her from anyone that might want to try and hurt her. Juliet has been trying to make it clear to Warner that in addition to wanting no part in this at all, hurting others and controlling them with fear isn't really her cup of tea. Classic miscommunication trope, am I right? Don't you hate it when your sexy evil captor with bright green eyes won't listen to you? God, it sucks when that happens. Warner sends her off to her room with a warning that her behavior needs to improve in the future. And Juliet doesn't understand the threat that he's giving her until she sees Adam standing outside of her door and realizes that while she was resting in Warner's bed, Adam was being beaten and bruised to punish her. And it works. Even though she's still feeling conflicted about Adam's whole being a soldier betrayal thing, she can't help but see the little boy she grew up with when she looks at him. So when he tells her to put on a specific dress today, she runs to the armoire, determined to follow all of Warner's rules to keep Adam from enduring any more torture. When she gets her hands on the dress that Adam told her to wear, she finds a surprise on the shelf of the armoire, and it brings tears to Juliet's eyes. Adam has saved Juliet's one and only possession, her precious journal. Aww. And he's left a note for her that says, "It's not what you think." Chat, is this real? Can we trust him? That actually has been making me think, does chat no longer mean like a Twitch stream chat, like comments or anything? Because I feel like that's what it originally meant, isn't it? And now I feel like it kind of just means like ChatGPT. I don't want to ask ChatGPT. Well, Juliet sure hopes that she can trust him, so she puts her journal into her dress pocket for safekeeping. When Warner shows back up to Juliet's room, he can tell that she's not happy about Adam being hurt, but he doesn't dwell on it because they have some important business to attend to. They're going outside, and they have another awkward conversation where Juliet tries to make like a mean jab at Warner, a joke. So she says, "Your poor mother," like insinuating he's an awful person. And as soon as she says it, Warner kind of flips out. Like, "What do you know about my mom?" And she's like, "Dude, please. I was just like trying to be funny." That's how you know your joke really doesn't land. Neither of them get too caught up in it though, because it's time for everyone to stop. All right, Juliet is about to have a classic 2010s not like other girls moment. She is so amazed at the fresh air that she just reaches her hand up for the sun while a broody boy watches her with a smile on his face. I love it. I think she deserves to enjoy the fresh air, and to be cringe is to be free. But we should also be honest about these like manic pixie dream girl moments. They're standing on this like platform that overlooks a courtyard with all of the soldiers from the compound standing in soldierly formation. Warner steps to the edge of the platform and uses this sort of like gadget made of microphone material. And now that I'm saying out loud, I'm not sure if it's supposed to be a kind of futuristic technology or if Juliet just doesn't know what a lav mic is, like she's never seen it. Both of these options are completely possible. So Warner addresses these soldiers by making a pretty thinly veiled threat that anyone that messes with Juliet will have to deal with her death fingers. And speaking of which, the soldier that she was forced to hurt earlier, he's totally fine, by the way. He's doing great. Warner also makes all of the soldiers kneel in deference to Juliet, and it definitely makes the expectation of her safety and her position of power very clear, but it's not comfortable. Then he announces that a man named Delalieu has a report. I do not know how else to say this man's name, so please excuse my bad French accent. I do know that I sound like a little boy. And it's gonna keep coming up. Delalieu is like a little old man who was in the war. Like little grandpappy, he went to war, he's decorated, and he doesn't talk about it. Warner makes everyone wait in silence to hear this report in this perfect scolding, scary father type of way that somehow even makes Juliet feels like she's in trouble. Juliet and Warner make some more intense eye contact, nothing new. And then Grandpappy steps up to say there's a charge against a soldier named Fletcher. Fletcher fraternized with rebels, stole food and supplies, and he may or may not have spilled re-establishment secrets. Fletcher does not deny these charges, so Warner pulls out a gun and shoots him in the head. Yeah. Bam. No supervillain speech from this guy. I'm pretty sure Juliet has never seen someone get murdered point blank, except for the person that I'm sorry. So she has what I think is a pretty normal reaction. She's sick to her stomach, and she grabs Warner and pushes him against a wall to tell him that he disgusts her. Every time Juliet and Warner have one of these little disagreements, we see a glimpse at the fighter, the strong person that Juliet wants to be. Almost like that dissonance that we talked about between how she acts and who she wants to be slips away for a second. And she's the one to push back and yell and be stubborn. It's awesome. But this time when they're back in Juliet's room, Warner doesn't just smile at her with googly eyes and then say something unimaginably evil when she says that she's nothing like him. This time he pushes into her space and he shouts back. He says that her power is a gift. It's extraordinary. And Juliet thinks, I could almost say he hates me in this moment. Hates me for hating myself. Tell me if I'm out of line for thinking that they both lost it a little. It's definitely interesting that the one time Warner loses his cool is when Juliet is mean to herself. That night, Juliet is plagued with nightmares, so she tries to get comfortable on the floor to remind her of the good old days back in the asylum and a little bit less like Warner's bed. And what do you know? Mr. Adam Kent is sleeping on the floor of her bedroom too. I gotta give him some props here because he's only confused for like a millisecond, and then he goes ahead and tucks her in next to him on the rug, and this is like the sexiest thing that anyone's ever done in Juliet's mind. She's got a double dose of mommy and daddy issues. She wants to be taken care of, okay? But she also needs her independence. You have to find a balance. It's tough. And I am not speaking from experience. In the morning, Adam is gone, so she goes to the bathroom to get ready for the day, and uh-oh, Adam is not gone. He was in the bathroom checking out all his cuts and bruises. He bashfully yanks his shirt down and starts to try and apologize, but he can't find the right words. So Juliet holds out the note that he wrote her that says, "It's not what you think." And she says, "I know." And it feels like two people are on the same page for the first freaking time in this book. And we're about to see why that can only happen every so often, because Adam says, "Hold on." He turns the shower on, grabs Juliet by the hips, pulls her into the shower, closes the door behind them, and pushes her against the wall. That's the second time that's happened to her in 2 days. If I had a nickel. And then he leans down and whispers, "I can touch you." And Juliet's bones set on fire. Naughty, naughty Adam reveals that on the first night he was put into Juliet's cell, she was screaming in her sleep and he didn't know how to comfort her. So he touched her and nothing happened. He also says that he now knows why Warner wants her and to be open and vulnerable with you. I have no idea what he's talking about. And I tried with my whole heart to figure it out. My best guess is that he caught some sort of vibe while he was being tortured, but no one knows Adam can touch her and everyone knows that Warner wants her. And knowing what I know about the rest of the story, Adam has no idea what's going on. So I feel like I'm missing something here. But back to more important matters. For a girl that needs a hug more than most, Adam being able to touch her is huge news. And man, is Juliet into it. She's also pretty overwhelmed, but she thinks, "He's holding me the way no one has ever held me before, like he wants me." That is devastating. Now that these two are on the same page and we know that Adam isn't down with the reestablishment, they are like, we gotta get out of this place. But first, Juliet has to get ready for breakfast with Warner. So Adam turns off the shower and takes off his wet ass shirt, and you guys are never gonna believe this. In addition to his tatted up arms like this, like so, Adam has a big old chest piece, and it's a white bird with gold streaks like a crown atop its head. Juliet lets Adam pull her in for a real good long hug. Thank God. And she thinks, the world suddenly means something to me. The possibility of humanity means something to me. The entire universe stops in place and spins in the other direction, and I'm the bird. I'm the bird and I'm flying away. This is exactly what I meant when I said we can't fully trust Juliet's perspective on the world, because an 18-year-old's chess piece just saved her life. But also, what did I say? Hugs can save the world. I genuinely believe that hugs could save the world and solve so many problems. I know that's naive and stupid, but I believe it. At least in fiction. One good hug and Juliet's entire internal conflict about who she is and who she wants to be is gonzo. She knows who she is, and she's a motherfucking bird. Okay, fine, she's not like 100% healed, whatever. But she's making progress, so you better be proud of her. Or else. Breakfast with Warner is more of the same. Warner thinks Juliet is beautiful and he doesn't understand the dynamic between her and Adam because he doesn't think it can be romantic because Juliet kills people when she touches them. And Juliet thinks Warner is a nasty killer who wants her to be his little murder pet. But then she's kind of like, oh, you think I'm beautiful? Maybe I should take a peek in the mirror, which is something that she hasn't done, I think, for 3 years. And it continues. What I think is interesting here is the whiplash that you get every time you read one of their conversations. Their back and forth is so violent and punchy that it reads like banter because it flows so well, coming from both of them. But with the context of Warner being a cocky little bastard and Juliet despising everything that he stands for, it doesn't feel flirty so much as it feels yucky. And I think this chapter is a really good example. If you were to read this without the context of these characters, it would be fun. You and I are not as different as you might hope. His grin is so cocky I want to twist it with my fist. You and I are not as similar as you might hope. He smiles so wide I'm not sure how to react. I'm 19, by the way. Excuse me? I'm 19 years old, he clarifies. I'm a fairly impressive specimen for my age, I know. I pick up my spoon and poke at the edible matter on my plate. I don't know what food really is anymore. I have no respect for you. You will change your mind, he says easily. Now hurry up and eat. We have a lot of work to do. Like, that's like a fun, cute little back and forth. You're like, hee hee, romance. Oh, this is fun. No. This is part of the same conversation just a couple pages before. The world is disgusted by you, he says, his lips twitching with humor. Everyone you've ever known has hated you, run from you, abandoned you. Your own parents gave up on you and volunteered your existence to be given up to the authorities. They were so desperate to get rid of you, to make you someone else's problem, to convince themselves the abomination they raised was not, in fact, their child. My face has been slapped by 100 hands, and yet he laughs openly now. You insist on making me the bad guy. He meets my eyes. I am trying to help you. I'm giving you an opportunity no one would ever offer you. I'm willing to treat you as an equal. I'm willing to give you everything you could ever want, and above all else, I can put power in your hands. I can make them suffer for what they did to you. He leans in just enough. I can change your world. He's wrong. He's so wrong. He's more wrong than an upside-down rainbow. But everything he said is right. That is not flirty or fun. That is emotional manipulation. So there's this whiplash that you get every time Warner and Juliet are together that is clearly meant to make you uncomfortable and intrigued at the same time. A week passes and there's no movement on the Adam and Juliet get out of here plan, mostly because they are both feeling suffocated. It is just Warner. Warner, sleep. Tank, another Warner, all day, every day. He wants Juliet to not only agree to work with him, but to want to work with him. And now she is no longer allowed to speak to the soldiers, so even though Adam is sleeping next to her on the floor every night, they have no communication at all. And when Warner isn't around, there's very strong Big Brother is watching energy because cameras are everywhere. So Juliet politely and reasonably requests that the cameras in her bedroom are removed. Whoa, big surprise! Obsessive Warner says, no way, Jose. And his reasoning is that Juliet is a very dangerous person, a VDP, and that throws Juliet back into the memory of the murder that gave her that title. Story time! When Juliet was just a baby herself at 14, she saw a young mom at the grocery store with her kid on one of those backpack leashes. And this was not a situation where the baby was just a runner, so it was for the baby's safety to keep them on the leash. It was more like mom not paying attention to the kid and yelling at the kid for being a kid type of vibe. I will say I don't personally love some of the way that this dynamic was written, but the overall sentiment is that this kid was not being well taken care of. And Juliet saw this little baby fall and cry and get no help. So when she dropped everything she was holding to go pick this baby up, she thought she was doing the right thing. Oh my god. We gotta remember here that Juliet also had a bad mom, so when she saw that this child was being neglected, she could also see her own suffering in that. This topic of conversation launches Warner and Juliet back into another angry back and forth. And Warner goes back to the idea that he brought up when he was mad at Juliet for hating on her abilities, that he and Juliet are one and the same. He looks at Juliet and he sees complacency. He thinks that Juliet feels like she deserves the abuse that she's suffered, and he wants her to see that she can be exactly what everyone's afraid of, all powerful. And it does sound like he's projecting a bit. He says, you thought if you could just try a little harder, be a little better, smarter, nicer, you thought the world would change its mind about you. You blamed yourself for everything. You've suppressed all your rage and resentment because you want to be loved. This hits hard for Juliet. Because he's not wrong, but she still disagrees. She believes in kindness and prosperity for all, and she can't do anything to work toward that if she becomes some selfish murder machine. Even if she also for sure does not value herself as a human being. And this is just me talking now, but it ain't all bad to want a little love. and now don't you forget it. She tries to explain herself. It's probably the most comprehensible conversation in the book so far. It says, I don't want to be anyone for anyone but myself. I want to make my own choices, and I've never wanted to be a monster. I value human life a lot more than you do, Warner. You would think that would be the end of the conversation, but it just sends Warner into this giggle fit because he is nothing if not a creepy little simp. And this is the first time that Juliet has ever said his name. I know. So everything Juliet's saying just goes over his head, and he decides that he just needs to try a little harder. She'll come around eventually. This whole disagreement, by the way, about who Juliet is and what she wants is still her attempt to get the cameras in her bedroom removed. And it's when Juliet gets angry enough to stand up for herself and basically threaten Warner that he's like, whoa, yeah, I'll take those cameras out of your room if you touch me. Yuck! She is so disgusted by him, she doesn't want to touch him, even if she gets to hurt him. The conversation loops back around to Adam as her soldier. Warner is very confused by their dynamic, mostly because Juliet seems to always listen to Adam, less because he's suspecting anything romantic going on. And apparently, Adam volunteered to be the soldier that goes into Juliet's cell to kind of make sure that she's a stable enough person to work with. Why? Because he does remember her. And he said some not so nice things about her. He basically said, yeah, send me in to see the freak. I'm glad she's locked up. This gives us two things. First, another bone. Second, Juliet gets really, really mad. Like so mad that she does want to hurt someone, and if anyone deserves to feel the wrath of her anger, it's gonna be Warner. So she says, take off your shirt. He stands in front of her, pumped to cop a feel of her life-sucking powers. Ew. And she reaches out to touch him, but when she tries to get him to pinky promise that this will get rid of the cameras in her room, she remembers that she cannot trust this man. And even though he sucks, she probably shouldn't kill him with an ability that she doesn't really understand. So she steps away and tries to leave the room. But who's blocking the door? Adam, of course, who probably heard the whole murdered a small child convo, and she's looking all flustered, and Warner isn't wearing his shirt. And he's saying, hey, Adam, go remove the cameras from Juliet's room. And there's this threat of that, meaning Juliet has to touch him at some point in the future, just like looming over her head. Juliet is stressed and confused. There is only so much that a girl can handle at one time. But we gotta take the wins where we can get them, and they officially have permission to cut the damn cameras. They're free. A little bit. It's kind of bittersweet now that Juliet knows Adam is a shit-talking liar, in addition to being one of Warner's top soldiers. And she's not sure if she can trust the version of him that pressed her up against the shower wall and told her he'd get her out of here. So while Adam scampers around tearing down the cameras, we get the rundown on what happened in 3rd grade, when Juliet was the new kid in school and everything was still pretty normal. She already had it kind of rough at that point. Like, there hadn't been any accidental murders yet, but her family moved around a lot because of her skin condition, and it just made it really hard to be a kid. And we already know how much her parents sucked. Juliet even mentions that back in 3rd freaking grade, she was at such a point of self-hatred that she already avoided looking at herself as much as possible. 3rd grade. That is a literal baby, a tiny fetus. At this new school, there's a boy with bright blue eyes who seems to have it even worse than she does. She sees Adam get dropped off at school by his father, who pushes him out of the car and beats him. A fully grown adult taking down a 9-year-old outside of an elementary school, and not a thing is being done about it. She says that Adam laid on the ground just waiting for his father to leave, and then he started to cry, and this was a pretty core memory for Juliet. I think that seeing someone else suffer the same way she had was kind of mind-blowing, and realizing that she's not alone in this changed her. And also seeing this abuse as an outside party immediately radicalized her. I mean, the image of a grown adult beating on a 9-year-old is just, I mean, it's horrifying. I can't believe it's in a young adult novel. We come back to Juliet's camera-free bedroom, and she wants to have it out with Adam once and for all. So she admits to him that the grocery store incident with the little boy did happen. And I think that she is so used to being hated that that's the response she's always expecting. So when Adam says, yeah, but I know that was an accident, and I never thought you were a monster. It changes the chemical makeup of Juliet's brain. Adam is also kind of mentally combusting, and he's like, you don't remember me. And Juliet, who is experiencing the euphoria of someone having faith in you for the first time, is like, yeah, I remember you, bro. I remember that you were the nicest person in the history of the world because we never had a single conversation, but I always knew that you were the only person standing up for me against bullies and looking at me like a human being. There's so much open honesty in this scene, and there's been so much trauma bonding between the two of them up to this point that it makes sense to me that Juliet is so caught up in the idea of Adam and the feeling they shared as kids. She had never been really seen by anyone before, and he has muscles. And now that they both know where the other person stands, Adam and Juliet are just two lonely kids that have been deprived of human connection for like ever. So they make out. Duh. Then we get another taste of the past from when Juliet and Adam were 14. They'd both been obsessed from a distance, so they never actually talked to each other, but Juliet always saw Adam as a softie with a tough exterior, and Adam always protected Juliet behind her back, and Juliet thinks that she's been in love with Adam for years. The word thinks is maybe a little bit of a rude insert on my part, but they have never spoken to each other, not a single time. It seems like they might have been on the precipice of being more than theoretical friends, but they never got the chance because of the grocery store toddler incident, which Juliet does go into a little bit more detail on like her thoughts and feelings during that experience, and I don't want to talk about it. It's been dark enough, you know? But we find out that it's the first time she ever experienced her powers in full. So she didn't even know that her power was deadly, only that it could hurt people. It's just like emotional dagger into the chest after dagger after dagger. In present day time, a knock on Juliet's door interrupts Adam and Juliet's very intense hugging, and Adam opens the door to another soldier named Kenji, who's at the door like, let me get a look at her. Let me see her, man. Adam shoos this man away and goes back to snuggling with Juliet on the ground, and he tells her that he's been cooking up a plan to get them out. Warner's troops are planning a big attack against the resistance, who we know nothing about, and Adam thinks the attack will be the perfect cover for their escape. So they just need to last 3 more weeks in this hellscape and then they can be free. And Juliet is like, we can get out? Why would you risk your life to go out on the run with me? And Adam says, oh, you silly girl, and lists a bunch of selfless things that he saw her do when they were kids. And he says, you're the only good thing left in this world. When you're in the thick of reading this book, it's really easy to buy into the drama and think that these kids have no choice but to feel this deeply about each other. But saying it out loud does kind of make them seem like they'd be the most insufferable couple you've ever met. And saying that Juliet is the only good thing left in the world kind of puts her on an insane pedestal. Like, she's cool. I'm ride or die for Juliet, but she's also a person. And she thinks she's a monster just for existing and having this power that she never chose to have. These two, they're on love bomb watch. That's all I'm saying. 2 of the 3 weeks until their freedom goes by, and it is Warner all the time. Again. But Juliet says something interesting to us. Her feelings about Warner start to shift now that she has this sense of safety in her impending freedom and doesn't feel the need to constantly fight against becoming Warner's pet murderer. She starts to see exactly what we do and that Warner is projecting himself onto her. And that makes Juliet feel bad for him because we're not the same. I want to be better. We also get full confirmation from Adam that Warner is cuckoo bananas for Juliet. Like, from when he started researching her pre-asylum rescue to now, she is the only thing he talks about every second of every day. And it seems like he's driving himself a little crazy. He's always in and out of her room and he has this frantic energy about him all of a sudden. And he always seems paranoid, and if he's suspecting that Juliet is up to something, then he's right. The lovebirds here are in full honeymoon phase, but every day hanging over Juliet's head is the touch debt that she owes Warner now. And that fear comes to a head when Warner hands her a skimpy little tank top and booty shorts and leads her down into the basement. He He is so creepy. Warner, cut it out. She gets shoved into a dank room that reminds her of being in a cell, probably because they locked the door behind her. But I imagine it more like a big, empty interrogation room because it has this huge two-way mirror. And it gets worse because the room starts to shake all around her from floor to ceiling, and straight out of like a Saw movie, spikes start shooting out of every surface and then disappearing. I've never seen the Saw movie, so I don't know if that happens, but it's what I imagine they're like, and it's the kind of thing that everybody's seen in a video game. Warner is channeling his inner Bowser, and instead of forcing Juliet to touch him, he sends in her worst nightmare.
A child.
A little toddling baby, already sobbing, wanders into this spiky death chamber. And if Juliet doesn't pick him up and carry him to safety, then the spikes will kill him. Is that something Bowser would do? The choice here is obvious. Juliet's not gonna let this child stumble into a spiky death. So she weaves through the room, trying to learn the pattern of the spikes, and she does exactly what Warner wants her to. She picks the baby up with her bare hands. He wails and screams, and when he's so weak that he passes out, Juliet tries to hold him by the diaper so that she hurts them the least amount possible, which works, but that makes the baby wake up and he panics all over again. Thank God, the spikes go back into the ground so Juliet can let the baby go. And while he sprints away from her in fear, Juliet has to look at this sweet, pure, innocent bundle of life that she is physically incapable of giving love. And this devastation turns into rage. The strength that we keep getting little bits and pieces of takes over her full force. And there is exactly one person she would love to unleash this rage on. Juliet goes straight for the two-way mirror, and it says, I catapult through the concrete walls. I crush the glass with 10 fingers. I'm clutching a fistful of gravel and a fistful of fabric at Warner's neck, and there are 50 different guns pointed at my head. Warner is thrilled, amazed that Juliet somehow has the strength to break through concrete and crush his body like a baby carrot. But when Juliet sees what she's done, it stops any drive to kill that she had. She pushes away from Warner and says, if you ever put me in a position like that again, I will kill you and I will enjoy it. And then she goes to cry in the shower. Even though this is another not so cheerful moment in the books, I kind of love this section because it shows that however evil Warner is, he's a little bit right about Juliet having no idea what her full potential is. She just smashed through concrete with her bare hands. And we're just supposed to move on from that. But at the same time, if Juliet reaching her full potential means violence and destruction, is it even worth it for her to explore that? Now that we're about halfway through the story, I want to have a quick check-in, or check-up, on Juliet. We talked about how she crosses out some of her own thoughts, and now I want to talk about how some of those thoughts have progressed. Let's talk about the numbers. At the halfway point, there are 99 instances of crossouts, if you trust my ability to count, which is shaky. The vast majority of these crossouts seem like things that Juliet doesn't want to admit either to herself or the people around her. Lots of denial happening, wanting to be perceived as perfect, and a dash of disbelief that people might care about her. One thing I find interesting is how few crossouts there are when she's with Warner. It almost feels like there's a freedom that she has when she's speaking with her enemy because there's no pressure to be good or perfect. I think Charlie XCX said it best. Baby, you're my enemy. You're the only one who knows the way I really feel. Whoa. And not to force meaning into the bone game, but while we're chatting here, the bones tend to pop up a lot more when Juliet is in that internal, withdrawn state of being and her thoughts start to turn existential, which I think is a really good representation of what it feels like to be stuck in your head. All of a sudden, your thoughts are spiraling and everything feels heavier and out of control, and you gotta go get lunch with your friends to remember that that's really the point, you know? And that's hard for Juliet. She doesn't really have any friends. Hence the bones. Back into the thick of it, Adam finds Juliet crying in the shower post-Babygate and tries to convince her that she's not a monster and they're going to escape. But the thing that makes her feel better is when he says, because I'm in love with you. And then they make out, which also makes her feel better. At least good enough for her bones to disappear. She feels so much better, in fact, that she decides it's time to put on a clean dress and take a look at herself in the mirror for the first time in like 3 years. And of course, she's gorgeous, and that's why all these loser boys are tripping over themselves to get to her, even though she could kill them with her touch. The description of her when she looks in the mirror, always makes me laugh because of the fan fiction energy of it. Like, her cheekbones are higher than she remembers. Her lips are too pink. And her teeth are unusually straight. Ugh, I just work too hard. I'm too dedicated to my job. It's very YN of her. And it's perfect. Adam comes back into the bathroom so that Juliet can tell him she loves him too. First I love yous are dropped. And then they make out again, but it's interrupted by alarms going off. Uh-oh. They leap apart from each other just as Warner enters the room and find out that there's been a breach in the HQ. Warner tells Adam to go find his commanding officer and then starts making some strange comments about Juliet's form-fitting dress and getting very close to her. Close enough to rip the slit of her dress open even wider. And then he says, "What is this?" and holds up Juliet's notebook. Fuck. She was too busy reuniting with her face to realize that her skin-tight dress didn't hide the notebook in her pocket. Juliet doesn't have a chance to explain herself because Adam is back and he means business. He has a gun pointed at the back of Warner's head. It's time to get out of here! Adam's new emergency game plan is to use Warner as a hostage in their emergency escape. But Warner's not going to go down without a fight. He pulls out his own gun and points it at Juliet, which is kind of a stupid move. We all know he's not going to shoot her. The boys get into a tussle, punching, pistol whipping, the whole shebang, and somehow it ends with Juliet holding Warner's gun to Warner's head, and Adam saying what we're all thinking: holy shit. And then Juliet grabs their pre-packed go bags and it's time for them to get out of here. Warner starts trying to convince Juliet to stay by planting a seed of doubt about Adam, telling her that she can't trust him and he's just using her for his own escape. And then doubling down about what he's been saying all along about how if Juliet stays with Warner, she can reach her full potential and get to have him as a partner. And it isn't until this moment when Adam stands 10 toes down and says, "She belongs with me," that Warner realizes there's more to their relationship than just a guard and his assignment with a strange past. And his reaction is to be, and I quote, horrified. It's so good. Juliet registers that the emergency alarms going off that started this whole scene were fake. It was just a drill. There's no emergency that they can hide behind while they sneak out. Their only option for escape is to climb out of the 15th story window. So Adam ties Warner up and tells Juliet that he'll go out the window first so that when she jumps down, he can catch her, and this gives Warner another piece of info, that Adam can touch her without getting hurt. I don't feel bad for Warner per se, but you just gotta know how rough that feels. All this time, Warner was giving Adam and Juliet the forced proximity romance of their dreams, while he thought he was winning her over with his shining personality. Adam climbs out the window, Juliet tosses their bags down, and Warner flails out in a last attempt to reach her. Juliet gasps and leaps out the window. Why does she gasp? Because she prays to God that Warner doesn't know he just touched her leg and nothing happened. What? Warner can touch her too? Are we being serious right now? As soon as Juliet's through the window, there's a manhunt for her. Soldiers are in the room she just kind of leapt out of, trying to pull her back up, so she has to jump the rest of the way down to Adam, and they sprint away, bobbing and weaving, and there's all these PSA speakers telling civilians not to go outside because there's rebels on the loose, and gunshots follow Adam and Juliet as they try to hide in the abandoned suburban area. And Juliet is so out of shape that she's having a hard time keeping up with Adam, which always just makes me think about when I would be forced to run in high school as a supremely unathletic person, and every single time I ran, somebody would ask me if I was okay. Juliet is right there with me because Adam ends up carrying her the rest of the way, thank God, until they get to this big field. That's how I imagine it, at least. There isn't a really clear description, but Adam explains that they're safe in this area because it used to be a nuclear power plant that exploded a few years ago, and the leftover radiation kills the tracking serum that all soldiers, Adam included, have injected into them. So hopefully Warner will think that Adam is dead because his tracker juice isn't working anymore. The downside is that Warner does know about this radiation field, so they're not totally in the clear. And if you're wondering about the potential side effects of radiation on Adam and Juliet, who are standing in the middle of it, No need to fear. Adam has been here a bunch and nothing wrong has ever happened. And he says that Warner did a bunch of radiation blood tests on Juliet without telling her, so she should also be fine. It doesn't make a ton of sense, but that's on purpose and it will eventually. Our sweet little runaways have a second to breathe, and Adam makes Juliet laugh for the first time in years by telling her that she's normal. And then he tells her that he's taking her home. Bound chicka wow. That's not really how he says it, but it is kind of how it comes across. You, me, and Juliet are all curious about what Adam means by home. And let me tell ya, it's freaking cute. To get there, Adam shows Juliet an army tank, the most reasonable form of transportation, that he's hidden away in a shed. He explains how he had this tank hidden away, but the only thing to note is that he's clearly been prepping for an escape from Warner's for a while now, and that makes Juliet very curious. They hop in the tank, and Juliet is overjoyed. Even with the horrors of being forced to torture a child that morning, getting to walk through a radiation-infested field just because she wants to, and sitting in this tank with Adam, who can touch her and talk to her, makes this the best day in all 17 years of her life. She's free at last. The drive to Adam's home is a contemplative one. These two people that knew each other as kids and have been trapped in a world that hates them just escaped that life together. Adam says his abusive dad is dead, and Juliet thinks about how Warner is going to be hunting them down now, and she tries to gaslight herself into pretending he never touched her, but she was sure that his hand brushed across her ankle. And then she thinks about how sick it is that Adam can touch her, and she's so happy about it and so afraid to lose him that she starts to cry. It's a little strange because all of the things she would miss about him if he were dead have to do with how hot he is, but that's a later problem. Adam pulls into a parking garage, friendly reminder that they are in a tank right now, which is crazy. And Juliet's crying, so Adam is like, babe, what's wrong? And she's like, I just can't believe you like me. And he's like, what do you mean? You're the most perfect person to have ever been born. They make out in the tank for a minute, but they can't get too hot and heavy because a little tiny voice calls out, Adam! Juliet's used to being hunted down, so she's terrified, but Adam gets out of the car and runs over to hug the sweetest little boy in the entire world. James! Little Jamesy is Adam's baby brother. He's 10 years old. He never shuts the fuck up, and he is the actual best person in the universe. James is so excited that Adam is home, and he's excited to meet Juliet, who apparently Adam has been talking about non-stop. Sweet James runs ahead to make sure that their house is clean, and there's this touch of awkwardness between Adam and Juliet that kind of comes with the territory of introducing someone to your family, even if that family is just a 10-year-old little boy. Plus, they're skipping ahead a few steps to a like, oh, we're on the run, so she's actually going to be staying with us for a while situation. And there's a moment where we see a potential problem between these two. Adam is explaining that they're going to be safe at his house for now, but they'll have to be ready for when Warner finds them eventually. And Juliet says, oh yeah, we'll be prepared to fight. And Adam says, yeah, to fight back. It's a very small difference, but it itches at you because Juliet is willing to fight for what she believes in, like we've seen in all of the moments where she wishes that she could be more or do more. If there's a fight that comes to the front door, sure, we have to fight back. Not exactly the same. Okay, so they walk from the parking garage to Adam's place, and again, the description here is a little bit vague. Like, we know that they're in a parking garage underneath an office building, and they go to the main floor of said office building. All of a sudden, they're opening a steel door and walking into the house. When James is telling Juliet about how the housing system works, he calls where he lives a street. Like, on this street, there are 10 other kids type of thing. But they don't ever talk about being outside on like a literal paved street. So I could be completely wrong, but I always imagined that they had converted this office building into housing and they live in one of the smaller office spaces. There is a strong possibility that there are just housing buildings next to the office, but I think because we know that there aren't traditional streets of houses anymore, and because of the situation of the people that live here, that it is the office building itself. I think. And as I'm rambling on about this, I also think that this is one of the potential things that could turn readers away. The smaller world building details, like where the fuck these characters are right now, is not always explained. And usually I am the type to be very annoyed by this, but one, nostalgia, and two, this book is much more focused on pulling you into the emotional experiences of existing in this world than the world building itself. And as a world building lover, I get sucked in every dang time. Adam opens the door to his home and it's so cozy and sweet, with like a couch and decorations that were picked out with love. And little Jamesy lives here by himself and he's so excited to tell Juliet about it. Like how some lady named Benny checks in on him and how all the other kids live together in housing because they're all orphans. And he eats this like nasty cube of fake food that has all the necessary nutrients to survive in it, and he cooks it in this weird machine that Juliet's never seen before. And she's looking around horrified at the state of these kids' lives, but also in awe because this is the most loving home she has ever seen in her life. It's a lot to take in. Adam tells little Jamesy that he cannot tell a soul that Adam and Juliet are here. And Juliet watches his little baby face and thinks, for one infinitesimal moment, I saw something that looked like raw understanding flash in his eyes. A 10-year-old who can be trusted absolutely. This always makes me cry because he is just a baby, like actually just a baby, and he should not have to be trusted absolutely. He should be playing outside with his friends and like eating Uncrustables. Ugh. James falls asleep in Adam's lap, and it feels like we're watching a single father take care of his kid while he has a date over for the first time, which also makes me so sad because Adam is also a child. They have yet another "why do you like me? Because you're the best person in the universe" conversation. In this edition, Adam tells Juliet that he's been looking for her since she was taken away. And Juliet tells Adam that she loves him, and she watches him carry little Jamesy to bed, and she thinks, I watch him walk away with the only family he has left, and I know why Adam joined the army. I know why he suffered through being Warner's whipping boy. I know why he dealt with the horrifying reality of war, why he was so desperate to run away, so ready to run away as soon as possible. Why he's so determined to fight back. He's fighting for so much more than himself. I wanted to read this whole quote out because I think it's one of the best descriptions we get of who Adam is and where he's coming from in this entire series. Adam has been stripped of the opportunity to live a self-centered life. He decided at a very young age that his family was going to be his number one priority, and that meant that he could no longer make decisions as an individual. Every choice he makes impacts him and James. And in Adam's mind, the safety and survival of his loved ones became the only reason to live. And this moment is when Juliet really comes to understand that. Now that James is tucked into bed and Adam and Juliet are coming down from the adrenaline-filled survival mode of being hunted through the streets, there is only one thing on these crazy kids' minds. They basically use a bunch of scrapes that Juliet got today as an excuse to put their hands all over each other. And as soon as the white bird with gold streaks gets brought up again, and Adam tells Juliet that he got it tattooed on his chest because he used to dream about it all the time, and she realizes that she stopped dreaming about it when she met Adam, and that his presence in her life set her free in a bird-esque way. Oh, it's go time. Oh, it's so go time. They set up a floor bed situation in the living room, and it turns out that Juliet is kind of the freaky one here. She's been deprived of touch for so long that it feels crazy to be physical with another person. She thinks, he drops kisses down my throat like ecstasy, electric energy searing into me, setting me on fire. I'm on the verge of combusting from the sheer thrill of every moment. When I read this as a teen, I thought, wow, this is love. This is art. Now I just see the ghosts of Tumblr's past. I do think it's a perfect time capsule piece of art from that 2010s period, because this was one of the popular examples of this sort of flowery style doing really well. And a lot of it holds up. Like I said, it is so good at sucking you in, even now. Also, I normally wouldn't comment this much on a YA character's sex drive, but it's pretty important to who Juliet is as someone that's never been allowed to touch anyone, sexually or not. And now that she's found someone she can touch, it's a really important part of their connection because of who Juliet is. And it's not the only reason they like each other, but I do think it's interesting that physical connection is kind of priority numero uno in their relationship, even though they now have a ton of time to speak freely and get to know each other. It's just something to think about. But nothing more than a little makeout happens between Adam and Juliet because a sad, tearful voice interrupts them. James is having nightmares and wants to come sleep on the floor, which also breaks my heart because James is usually here alone, so he has no one to comfort him. I want to die. The living room family sleepover goes very well until James wakes up and sees that our Romeo and Juliet are all snuggled up, and is a 10-year-old who misses his older brother and has no healthy examples of relationships in his life and was told Juliet can't touch people. He is not happy with what he sees. This moment, it cracks me up because James is so perfectly bitter and clueless about all of the layers happening here. He says, I thought you said she couldn't touch anyone. And Adam says, she can't. Except for you. Right, except for me. And Warner. She can't touch anyone except for you. And Warner. Right. It's perfect. It's perfect. It's a perfect moment. It's a perfect moment. It's perfectly written. That's a masterpiece. Adam pulls James away for a little brotherly convo in which he tells his brother that Juliet is his girlfriend, which explodes Juliet's brain. And the last thing that she wants is to intrude on these two brothers' lives. She's used to being invisible and making herself as small as possible. And she's never been a part of a family unit like the one James and Adam are. But for the first time, she has hope that maybe someday she will know how to be a family member. Oh, our sweet girl! Our sweet girl! All is calm. James is at school, Adam gets in the shower, and Juliet is sitting in the living room eating some breakfast when someone starts to slam on the front door. Adam told Juliet that no one knows about this place, so the only logical explanation for this is Warner. Thankfully, Juliet stays perfectly calm. She grabs two guns and she double fists them toward the front door. She's a natural. She knows exactly what to do. Adam must have heard some of the commotion because he comes into the living room, takes one of the guns from Juliet, and opens the front door to find not Warner, but Kenji. I'm not biased at all. I don't know what you're talking about. I have no bias. As you know, we met Kenji for like 1 second earlier when he was being very annoying, knocking on Juliet's door, etc., etc. So we only know him as one of Adam's soldier friends, which could mean that he's one of Warner's minions. But considering he's been beaten so badly you can barely see his face, and his clothes are shredded, and he can't even stand up on his own, it's unlikely. They drag him inside, and even though he's begging for their help, he's kind of being antagonistic about it. Like telling Adam that he's lost his mind for running away with Juliet, and talking about Juliet like she's not standing right there listening. So Adam is instantly pissed off, and it seems like the word friend between these two, it only applies loosely. Adam fixes up Kenji in the bathroom as best as he can and then comes back out to fill Juliet in. After Adam and Juliet ran away, Warner tortured Kenji for information since it was known that the two of them were friends. But Kenji didn't know anything because Adam kept everything about James a total secret. But it is unknown if Kenji's tracker serum juice stuff was deactivated in the radiation field, so they're gonna need to pack James up and find a new safe house ASAP. Just when these two thought they had a second to breathe, they gotta hit the road again. It is kind of painfully stressful because now they'll have Jamesy and no idea where to go. So Adam pulls Juliet in to comfort her, and that's when Kenji comes back out of the bathroom to the site of an impossible embrace. He cannot believe that they can touch. It should be impossible. But Adam changes the subject to how the hell Kenji found them. Kenji gives them this kind of half-assed makeshift story about trying to find them and then getting lost at a shed and then passing out and waking up to some random dude carrying him to Adam's front door. It doesn't make sense, but Kenji's like, who cares how I got here? The important thing is I know a safe place we can go. You would think that'd be really appealing right now, especially in this moment, but the unknown is pretty terrifying. And when Kenji mentions that this safe place is run by a guy that's also interested in Juliet's abilities, it freaks them out even more. Adam says that he doesn't want to put James through the ordeal of being on the run and going through whatever it is they're about to go through because he's too young to have to deal with this. And Kenji says, we're all too young to have to deal with this shit. Don't fool yourself, bro. No one should have to see what we've seen. No one should have to wake up in the morning and find dead bodies in their living room, but shit happens. We deal with it and we find a way to survive. You're not the only one with problems. This dialogue from Kenji is a great intro. He's loud and blunt and rash and a class clown, and he's also ready to stand on business. He's not a stupid clown. He's a dumb one with a plan and an indomitable human spirit. And maybe he's a little too blunt and can be a bit inappropriate, but every group needs a friend that will humble them. He's also a big ol' flirt, so he follows that up by turning to Juliet and saying, you know, you're pretty sexy for a psycho chick. Which is a crazy thing to say to someone. And Adam presses a gun to his forehead. Kenji is messy. He's messy. And not in everyone's taste, but in my opinion, pretty much every scene in the series is more fun when he's there. He's so messy that even with a gun to his head, he keeps pushing. And when he tells Juliet that she'll be more into him after he's cleaned up, he is lucky that Adam doesn't pull the trigger. But he does elbow Kenji right in the nose. Blood gushes everywhere, so he runs to the bathroom and Adam and Juliet convene in James's bedroom closet space to trust Kenji or not to trust Kenji. It feels like a big decision to go somewhere they know nothing about and trust the word of this guy they don't know that well, and whatever they do is gonna have a huge impact on James, so Adam doesn't know how to make the correct choice. He says, "Tell me what to do." So desperately that it makes me empathize with a man. He's just a kid taking care of a kid. He doesn't know how to get through this dystopian hellscape. Juliet says that going with Kenji seems like the best option. So the three of them get all packed up while James is being educated by the abandoned elderly community. It seems like every minute spent with Kenji confuses Juliet more and more. When she threatens him, he definitely gets scared. She can see it in his eyes, but then he bounces back immediately. He has a ceaseless optimism and he's always flirting with her, and it doesn't compute to her how someone can be so relentlessly upbeat and annoying and charming. And annoying. Of course, what Juliet hasn't figured out yet is that annoying Adam by flirting with her is one of Kenji's favorite pastimes. All Juliet can think about is that she hasn't had the "what are we" talk with Adam yet, and so she isn't sure if they're mutually exclusive, which after everything is crazy. But honestly, I get her. Like, what are we? She needs to know. Who cares what else is going on? This is important. Just before Adam and Juliet murder Kenji together, James gets home from school, so it's time to leave. It turns out that being a fugitive of war, constantly in danger, and on the run from the government sounds like a grand adventure to a 10-year-old. This only makes Adam feel worse because he can't get James to see how difficult and awful this is gonna be. And while he's trying to explain it, Kenji is there like this little devil on James's shoulder, saying, "Don't listen to him. Running from the government is a super fun and age-appropriate activity." Naturally, this pisses Adam off. Honestly, I would be annoyed too. I do think Kenji pushes it a little too far because it's not his place to parent James. But the way Kenji and Adam's personalities clash here is something that I think this book does so well. All of the characters have such specific personalities and worldviews that the natural conflict that comes up between each character feels so real. Like, we don't know Kenji yet, so we don't know why he feels so comfortable stepping into an authoritative role here, but he does. So he crosses these little lines and steps on Adam's toes, who we already know is the most protective mama bear of all time. Just when our motley crew thinks they have a chance to escape in the tank that Adam stole, all hell breaks loose. Guess who's back? It's Warner. The team grabs their supplies, shoots the lock off the back door, and makes a run for freedom. Kenji, who just had a bullet taken out of his leg, is struggling to keep up, and James is a feeble little ball in Adam's arms, so Adam makes the hardest decision that he has ever had to make. He leaves James with Kenji so that he and Juliet can go find a car for their escape. They've come to their senses and realized a tank is too damn big. Took them long enough. And even though Kenji can be annoying and leap over boundaries, he knows when to be serious, and he promises to protect James. So Adam and Juliet run outside. Guys, they kind of trust each other. When they run outside, It's total chaos. A classic chase scene. They're weaving through people and abandoned buildings, and Juliet is trying to run directly behind Adam so that he doesn't get shot, because she's pretty sure Warner only cares about bringing her in alive, but she's so much smaller than Adam that she's not sure if she's helping. She's so tiny. But again, it's hard for her to keep up. Didn't get a lot of cardio time at the asylum. This is the first time Juliet's seen Adam in this sort of combat-like situation, and she's a little like, damn. It's a little scary how good he is at this. But Adam makes it a point to say he is not trying to kill people. He's only shooting to harm, shooting to injure. What's the saying? He just wants to stop the soldiers that are trying to kill him. While they're running through one of the buildings, Juliet sees storm cellar doors that they can go through. I don't know what that means. I think it's a tornado area thing, but I trust her. And when they burst through the doors, there are 3 perfect cars for their escape. And 1 angry Warner. And Adam Kent has been shot. Guards take Adam's body away. Juliet is pulled into a nearby building, and her bones nearly explode when she can breathe long enough to see that Warner is the one pulling her away, and his bare hand is covering her mouth. Dread takes over. She's so afraid and so sad and so angry that for the first time in her life, she wishes she could use her abilities. Warner tells her that Adam is dead and he can touch her. And she thinks he's like a feral dog, crazed and wild, thirsty for chaos, simultaneously aching for recognition and acceptance. Love. It's almost like Warner's perception of this situation is completely different than everyone else's, and that's why his behavior makes no sense. Which is why Juliet sees the chaos and yearning in him. But it's not her responsibility to fix this man, not while he's literally holding her captive. So while he tells her that he loves her and he wants her to want him and he knows she's attracted to him, she's just disgusted. She will not be his pet. He holds her up against a wall, and while he leans down to press against her neck, she sees a gun in his jacket and a little light bulb goes off over her head. So when Warner touches her again, she relaxes. And when he kisses her, she thinks of Adam bleeding out in front of her. And when he kisses her again, she thinks of the gun at his waist. And then she thinks, I don't know how to reconcile the confusion in my mind, my hesitant repulsion, my inexplicable chemical reaction to his lips. Because despite the disgust and the fear, she doesn't feel the way that she thinks she should. One second she's thinking, I stifle a horrified shiver that he misunderstands, and the next she's thinking, his voice is soft, easy, slow, deceptively persuasive. I'd never realized before just how attractive his voice is. Reading these extreme back and forths almost make it feel like Juliet is sitting directly on top of the line between love and hate. And Warner is almost too much, too extreme to be palatable or understood. But then she's ripping open his jacket, grabbing his gun, and while he's realizing his mistake, she shoots him and she runs. Okay. I think this moment is when some readers decide that Warner is pure evil and they are done with this series. And other readers lean in. When we talk about this scene, we have to call it what it is. Warner assaults Juliet. No matter what conflicting feelings Juliet has, she literally dissociates and she verbally and non-verbally says no. And while I do not want anyone to think I'm sitting here defending assault against women, even in fiction, I do think scenes that matter in the overarching story shouldn't be written off as cancelable offenses because they aren't resolved immediately. If you've been spoiled for the rest of the series and don't want to read it anymore after this scene, that is a-okay. But if you're someone that then condemns others for reading it or the book itself for existing because it isn't morally squeaky clean, maybe consider that the oppressive government hell-bent on violent control is also the one condemning others for not following the path that they've deemed acceptable. I don't mean it in a rude way. Honestly, I don't even think this is a big topic of conversation in the Shatter Me fandom, but it's something I feel like I see a lot of right now in general in media when it comes to morally gray content or character arcs or characters in general. And this is one of the heavier, darker scenes in the entire series, and so I thought it would be a good time to address it. Back to the story. Juliet has a general escape plan for the 3,000th time, and it's to get the family back together and get out. But that's easier said than done. So she's sprinting through the streets aimlessly, hoping that she'll be able to find Adam, and what she does find is a snail trail of blood. She follows it to an old industrial building with locked doors, and she tries to break it down with her shoulders. Juliet is 5'2" and extremely malnourished, and she's starting to panic because Adam cannot be dead. He needs to get back to James, and she cannot believe that she just shot Warner with a gun or that she just had to make out with him. And when it all gets to be too much, she switches to punching, and the metal door breaks like it's made of butter. So she punches again and again, and it's almost too easy to peel away sheets of metal, like when she broke through the interrogation room back at Warner's compound, literally yesterday. POV or Juliet. Juliet finds Adam inside this building, hanging from his wrists. She cuts him down with a knife that she digs out of his pants, of course. They have a little reunion kiss, and then they try to find a gosh darn car again so they can get back to Kenji and James. And yes, when Juliet is telling Adam how she found him, she's thinking about Warner pushing her up against the wall and kissing her. The thoughts are not positive, per se, understandably. It's more like the experience was so insane that my brain doesn't know how to process it, so I'm just gonna have to think about it over and over again, and maybe I kinda liked it, but I definitely hated it. They manage to find a car before Adam dies of blood loss, but then they have another problem to deal with because Juliet does not know how to drive. It's not a smooth ride. But they make it back to Kenji and James, and Adam is doing so badly and bleeding so much that Juliet moves him to the back seat of the car so that James won't see him so hurt. Somehow their safest option for a driver is Kenji, who we have to remember was also recently on the verge of bleeding out. So they tuck a sleeping James into the passenger seat and hope that none of them die before he wakes up. Juliet is in the back with Adam to make sure that he's still breathing, and they set off into the night. After such an action-packed evening, they're expecting a high-speed chase through the streets, but Warner and his troops are nowhere to be found. It turns out that on Kenji's mysterious journey to Adam's house, he did walk through the radioactive field that disables his tracking serum, which is a crazy thing to say. So there's a chance they will be able to escape. But that begs the question, how did Warner find Adam's house in the first place if none of their tracking serum is working? After listening to Adam and Juliet try to convince each other that everything is gonna be fine, Kenji tells them that they'll be at his safe place in 5 more minutes. And then because Kenji is Kenji and he loves to make a bad situation just a little bit more painful, he says, "Hey, guys, why didn't you tell me you were like together?" Which sets Adam and Juliet off into a very awkward and public "what are we" conversation that Juliet tries to end immediately because it's not the time. But Adam explains that he didn't declare their relationship loudly and proudly because he hadn't had a chance to ask Juliet yet if that's what she wanted. And he didn't want her to feel locked in. Even on the verge of death, he's a gentleman. And Juliet is a horny freak. She tells this boy, that she is so excited to be cuffed up, she will make him surviving tonight worth his while. Girl, calm down. Normally, I'm in support of her crush psychosis, but not right now. He's dying. Kenji parks the car in another parking garage, and he tells Juliet to stay put. He needs to get help so they can bring Adam to the medical wing, which is incredible news. They've got a medical wing in this place. They might make it out of this alive. And for 1 second, everything starts to feel okay. They feel safe. And then the medical team comes out, and they take Adam away, and they tell Juliet that she can't come, and that they're gonna do something to him. And she doesn't know what, and Kenji is acting totally different, like he's not even the same person. He's not making jokes, he's being serious, and this parking garage feels like a different planet. And Juliet remembers that she doesn't know Kenji that well. They had to trust him blindly because they had no choice, but that part is over now. And she's looking at this strong, confident, authoritative man that she does not know. And he might want the exact same thing from her that Warner does. So Juliet starts to scream. And then she blacks out. A lot of the wildest things in this book happen right when Juliet wakes up, and this is not an exception. She opens her eyes and she's clean and alive and in bed and naked. Juliet is in a little hospital-esque patient room, and there's a blonde, glasses-wearing, doctor-ish man sitting by her bed. His name is Winston, and he asks her a bunch of questions to see what state of mind she's in. And she does her best to answer, but she is a little caught up on where the fuck they are, and if Adam is alive, and why she's naked. The doctor, or sort of sometimes psychologist, as he puts it, or Blondie, as Juliet calls him, seems perplexed by our strange little Juliet, and he tells her that they wore gloves to clean her up, and that reminds her of the one time Warner didn't wear gloves, and he discovered that he could touch her. Bad time to think about that. Winston tells her that Adam and Kenji are both fine. When she was in full mental breakdown mode last night, she touched Kenji, and she doesn't feel particularly bad about the whole panicking part, but she does feel bad for hurting him. And then the man of the hour, Kenji himself, walks in, and he doesn't look like someone that just went through hell and then got touched by the scary death girl. He looks completely healed. Juliet thinks he was right. He does have a spectacular face, a defiant jawline, perfect eyebrows, eyes as pitch black as his hair, sleek, strong, a bit dangerous. I love Kenji. And Kenji, proud as ever, says, "This must be really difficult for you. Looking at my face, realizing I was right, realizing you made the wrong decision. I understand. I'm not a proud man, you know. I'd be willing to forgive you." But Adam has nothing to worry about because Juliet just threatens to touch him again, and that ends the conversation. She's kind of scary. And also a man named Castle wants to meet our lovely Juliet. As soon as Kenji mentions Castle, blonde fake doctor man Winston is like, "Dude, did you not tell them anything about this place?" And Kenji says, "No." That makes Winston laugh very hard, which is the last straw for Juliet. It is time to fill her in, boys. The long and short of it is that Kenji is going to introduce her to this Castle guy, so he runs off to get her some fresh clothes to borrow. And while he's gone, Juliet learns about some drama between Winston and Kenji. Winston keeps calling Kenji a nickname in a very microaggressive kind of way, and Juliet is like, yeah, that's a sucky thing to do to someone. The interaction is mostly another showcase of Juliet's sainthood. Kenji comes back, gives her some of his clothes to get dressed in, tells her repeatedly that Adam and James are fine and that she'll get to see them later, and then he walks her through this new place to meet with Castle, who is apparently the head of this entire movement. Juliet describes the place as an underground city, and it seems high-tech to me. There are lights everywhere and technology that she doesn't understand. And Kenji tells her very proudly that they steal the electricity they use to power the place. Juliet also notices that most of the people here are dressed in a sort of uniform that she describes as a strange suit, all white with gray stripes down the side. Very classic dystopian, like a regulated tracksuit that's less comfortable than just actual sweats. Juliet is honestly bursting with questions that nobody wants to answer, like how the hell Kenji doesn't have a bullet wound in his leg anymore. Why is this stranger named Castle so invested in finding Juliet that he sent Kenji to join Warner's army just to track her down? And who's Kenji, who is admitting that he didn't just accidentally stumble to Adam's house? He has always known where Adam lived because, as he says, "It was my job to know. We've all been looking for you." And then he shoves her into a room to wait for Castle. What is happening? What's going on here? And why is every person in this fictional universe looking for Juliet? Castle comes into the room 22 minutes late. I did the math. And Juliet describes him as a man that moves methodically, his face a mask of neutrality as he brushes wayward dreadlocks into a ponytail and seats himself at the front of the room. He's thin, fit, impeccably dressed in a simple suit. There are no lines on his face, but there's a streak of silver in his hair, and his eyes confess he's lived at least 100 years. He must be in his 40s. Their conversation starts slowly, and it feels like Castle is picking and choosing his words because this is something he really, really wants to get right. But at this point, Juliet is done playing along without actual proof that Adam and James are safe. And it seems like she's finally talking to the person that she needs to, because he says, "All right, follow me." And he takes her back through the underground city and points out a bunch of the rooms, like the dining hall and the training facility and so on and so forth. And there are so many people here, it feels like something entirely new to Juliet, who has been isolated literally and metaphorically for as long as she can remember. It's the stark opposite of the asylum that we started in. This man, Castle, is bringing her into the largest group of revolutionaries in North America. "Welcome," he says, "to Omega Point." He explains that the name Omega Point comes from the Greek alphabet. It's the last letter, and this group of people, according to Castle, is the last hope that society has. He gives Juliet this honestly pretty powerful speech about how deep the corruption and deception of the reestablishment goes, the apparent food shortage and the death of the livestock and the downfall of the climate aren't even real. There's plenty of food, it's just kept from the public. The animals are fine, they've just been genetically modified and hidden away. And the climate isn't great, but the problems are man-made and the damage isn't enough to destroy the planet yet. And all of these lies about the world's deterioration are just a way to keep the public under control. And all of it, water, food, animals, and the climate, can be fixed with the revolution of Omega Point. One moving speech isn't gonna make Juliet trust a total stranger with intentions that parallel Warner's. So she asks him for proof that the reestablishment is lying. And he says, girl, look around. We feed people here with food stolen from the reestablishment, and we've been to their farms, and we have a way to actually fight back. And this is when he brings Juliet to see Adam. Adam's in bed in the medical wing, still sleeping, but he looks okay. Healthy even. And now that Castle has Juliet perfectly primed for groundbreaking news after an inspiring speech, proof that the revolution is onto something, and the sight of her healthy, broody boyfriend, he says there are close to 200 people at Omega Point, less than half of whom have some kind of gift. I brought you here because this is where you belong, because you need to know that you are not alone. Yup, we got other bitches with superpowers. Oh my god. And Castle is one of them. He knew he couldn't be the only one with a superpower, so he Professor X'd it, searching out other people with abilities and bringing them together to form a powerful group that could take down the reestablishment. But is he Professor X? Or is he Magneto because he's got telekinesis? This is life-changing information for Juliet, and again underscores the difference in where she is now at Omega Point versus in the asylum at the beginning. Because it's not just surface level, she's not just surrounded by people. They're people that fundamentally understand something about her no one else ever has. She's not alone. A new person runs over to Castle with news that Warner is on the hunt for Omega Point and he's getting closer, which means Warner probably didn't die when Juliet shot him, but that's a side note. The exciting thing is that this newcomer also has an ability. Castle introduces her to Brendan, a British man with electricity powers that has a tendency to electrocute people when he touches them. So Juliet loves him immediately. And when she says, hey, it's okay, I kill people when I touch them, he doesn't even blink an eye. He just says, oh damn, that's crazy. Well, I'll see you around. And Juliet thinks Adam was right. Maybe things can be okay. Maybe I don't have to be a monster. Maybe I do have a choice. I think I'm going to like it here. This moment of understanding is huge, especially the Adam was right part. This is the beginning of an ongoing conversation between Adam and Juliet. And this interpretation of what Adam meant when he was saying that maybe everything will be okay ends up being at the root of that conversation. And we will see that come up many times in the future. Castle lets Juliet actually go into the medical wing to give her some time with Adam, but when she pulls up a chair and grabs his hand so quickly that Castle sees their physical touch from the girl who kills people with her skin, he's like, what are you doing? Oh my god, you're gonna kill him! Even this dapper, put-together leader man cannot believe what he's seeing. When he starts breathing again, he's like, okay, this is not normal. This means that Adam might also have an ability, and we might be able to figure out what it is. And then he leaves the lovebirds alone. And with that, I have a final update on our crossouts because we just passed the last one in this book, which brings us to a total of 112, a surprising number. There were 99 in the first half, which means only 13 more in the entire second half of the book. That is, again, if you trust my math. The pattern of Juliet being more sure of herself and crossing out less and less thoughts and getting less and less bones as we go is really solidified in the second half. Like, the more time she spends out in the world with people around her, the more she's able to come back to herself. And on top of that, I took a little look-see, and there are only 10 crossouts in total that have to do with Warner. And none of them have to do with Juliet being worried about how Warner perceives her. It's mostly fear that everyone else will find out Warner can touch her. So again, it's everyone else's perception that she's worried about, plus more denial. Adam wakes up in his hospital bed and he's tired, but he's doing much better. And the people that saved him come into the room in the creepiest way possible. Meet Sonia and Sarah, the identical twin healers with matching green eyes and slick back ponies and silver bodysuits. Even though they're kind of giving the shining realness, their energy is goody two-shoes in a way that makes a lot of sense for healers. Like, they are so sweet and selfless. But you know what? I know they would run this place like Dana runs the fucking pit if they had the resources.
Baby Jane Doe.
We know that one of them works on physical ailments and the other works on mental health, so they're a very powerful duo. And they just got back from taking James to the bathroom. And everything about his experience in this world is so heartbreaking to me. He has unimaginable levels of happy because he's been hanging out with other kids and eating real food. Like, he says he got to eat chocolate for the first time ever. I want to die. For the first time, it feels like they're all safe. Adam says everything is okay in the way that a parent says to a kid who doesn't know if the world is ending or not. And Adam is pretty sure he means it. After James goes back to the other kids, Adam and Juliet catch up. These teens have some pretty grown-up talk about what the hell is going on. Castle has already had the superpower talk with Adam, and he also tells Juliet that he had heard rumors about Omega Point while he was a soldier at Warner's headquarters. But the general consensus among the soldiers was that it was just a rumor. And as always, any talk about Juliet's powers and people wanting it comes right back around to Warner. So Juliet breaks it to Adam that she doesn't think Warner is dead, which is when our harbinger of lightheartedness and fun joins the conversation. He's not. Adam turns, frowns at the voice. What are you doing here? Wow, what a greeting, Kent. Be careful not to pull a muscle thanking me for saving your ass. You lied to all of us. You're welcome. You sedated my 10-year-old brother. You're still welcome. Hey, Kenji. I acknowledge him. My clothes look good on you. He steps a bit closer, smiles. Is it so wrong if he's my favorite character? I love him. And Juliet's little, hey, Kenji. So defeated. She gets him. Anyway, Warner has officially been seen on camera. His arm is in a sling from being shot, but he is not dead. Kenji isn't worried about it. He basically says, like, hey, that guy comes to town, I'll square up, no questions. He's ready for a fight. And so are all of his super-powered besties here at Omega Point. Yup, Kenji has a power too. Juliet asks for a demonstration, so Kenji smiles and disappears. He's so cool. That's right, he's got a camo mode, and he has used it to spy on pretty much everybody he's ever met in his life, including Adam and Juliet. But this explains how he knew where Adam lived. He's followed him home like 100 times. There was no random man dropping him off at Adam's door. He knew exactly how to get there. As we now know, Kenji was sent to be a soldier for Warner so that he could figure out what Warner was going to do to Juliet and try to get her out of there and bring her to Omega Point. And when Kenji learned that Adam was going to be a big part of the project, he also befriended him to try and get more information. It was all a plan, which pisses Adam off, so he makes Kenji leave to go get him some pants so he can get out of the medical wing. The second Kenji is gone, Adam and Juliet are boned up. They're making out, which, like, honestly, guys, in the middle of the medical room, I know no one else is here right now, but this is a public space. It's just, it's not the time or the place. It's not. I'm sorry. Literally every time they make out now, Juliet thinks about the tattoo of the bird on Adam's chest and how he's given her the wings to fly and be free forever. And again, it's really not that important plot-wise, but it is important for the characters. Like, we have to remember the bird. Kenji is on the same you guys are cringe page as me, because the first thing he points out when he gets back and Juliet and Adam are laying on top of each other in the bed is that the walls of this room are glass. Everyone can see them. The next stop on Juliet's tour of Omega Point is bed. Juliet is going to be sharing a room with the healing twins, Sonia and Sarah, and Adam and James are going to be sharing a room with Kenji, and we all think that's going to go really well. Adam starts to plan a little sneaky trip to visit Juliet in the middle of the night so they can make out, and Kenji is like, please? Guys, for the love of God. The rules here are important because they keep us safe. You can last 1 minute without sucking face. Please. The rules keep us safe mentality is something that I do live by deeply as a rule follower, but I also recognize it as a red flag. Oh, the rules keep us safe, and we have to do everything you say, no questions asked, and trust that you're doing what's best for us. I don't know about all that. In the morning, knock, 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 someone's here. It's Dr. Winston. He's here to bring Juliet to a little cult uniform fitting. Not really, but kind of. They have a special outfit made just for her so she can get out of Kenji's clothes and into the Omega Point uniform. And if you don't feel like you have a solid idea of who Juliet is, I think this line of dialogue when she's talking to someone that she doesn't know well will tell you everything that you need to know about her. She says, Oh, wow. Yeah, that sounds great. That'd be awesome, but no worries if not. On the way to get her new outfit, Winston tells her that there are 56 people at Omega Point with abilities. And if Juliet decides to stay, she would get to work with the Omega Point team to try and learn to control her abilities, which are unique to each individual. She asks Dr. Winston what his abilities are, and he says the worst possible thing that he could ever. I wish I had a cool power like yours. No, Winston. No, I don't want to hate him. I don't. But after the whole Kenji thing too, like, he's got some work to do. And I know that there's a dedicated section of the fandom that loves this man, but you gotta admit he's infuriating in this book. Winston is stretchy and flexible in like a Fantastic Four leader guy style. Or like Luffy. I would never talk to him again after his little comment, but Juliet is better than me. And she says, hey man, that's awesome. Give yourself some credit. And I think she's too nice for her own good. Even she hears herself and thinks, I'm wondering when I became a motivational speaker, when I made the switch from hating myself to accepting myself, when it became okay for me to choose my own life. Winston takes her to the same barren room that she woke up in when she got to Omega Point, but this time Adam is there waiting for her. Kenji is technically here too, but she only acknowledges him by waving a limp hand in his direction. And Adam kicks everyone out of the room like, hey, let me just talk to my girl for a second. Just 1 second. So Winston hands over her new supersuit and steps out. This time at least Adam does have something to say. He thanks her for what she did to get him to Omega Point because it saved his life. And then he turns around so she can slip into her new outfit. It is a purple jumpsuit with long sleeves, and I would like to reiterate that this book came out in 2011. But she feels amazing. And Adam says she looks sexy as hell, which sparks up her spine. And when she says, I feel like I look like a gymnast, he says, no, you look like a superhero. Kenji and Dr. Winston come back into the room and everyone is blushing because of how hot Juliet looks in her purple jumpsuit, which I find a little hard to believe. But it's not complete yet. Winston hands her a pair of boots and elbow-length gloves, so she has the option to take them off, giving her the power to decide when she wants to use her ability. And when they walk out of the room, Adam pulls off one of the gloves and grabs her hand, and she is on top of the world. She's in control now. Things are changing, but this time I'm not afraid. This time I know who I am. This time I've made the right choice and I'm fighting for the right team. I feel safe, confident, excited even, because this time I'm ready.